bum bum bum. Bada bum bum bum. Bum bum bum. Bada bum bum bum. Bum 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 bum. Bada bum bum bum. Hey everybody, we're back. Been a long week, but we're back with more Great Ace Attorney Chronicles 2 Resolve Episode 3, The Return of the Departed Soul, Part 4. We keep going into this. Alright, let me get rid of this lovely front page. It looks the same, except without me in it. Last we left off, we had just made a stunning discovery that Courtney Scythe has been the coroner in a past case regarding the professor, who is relevant in this case because of a wax model, which we believe is the double for the guy that allegedly died for the person we're defending. This is going places, guys. Ah, the Knight Errant himself! Oh, have you been watching from the gallery, Mr. Sholmes? I've been on the edge of my seat the entire time! Courtroom draws are fascinating affairs, as a spectator at least. I'm glad you've been enjoying yourself. I have to ask! What on earth is going on? This makes no sense! What's this professor business all about? He doesn't look like any professor I've met before. Who even is he? Of course. You were in Germany already 10 years ago. Yes, the professor. When I discovered he was the one who had been abducted, a sense of foreboding stirred within me. But who knew the monster would come knocking at your door? My heartfelt sympathies! As it turns out, Lord Van Sykes is even more intimately tied to this case than any of us realized, isn't he? Yes, how true. Oh, I'm actually Lumpy Puppy and Cheston. Thank you for your resubs. 57 and 34 months. Respectively. I did see you when we were coming in, but I got ahead of myself there. Oh, it is March 10th. I really hope someone new doesn't show up because my Italian accent is terrible. I did do one! If you want to go back to the start of this trial with the witnesses in the balloon, I already did a Mario accent. But if another one pops up, I'll try again. It's gonna stink, though. Like almost all these voices. Yes, how true. His great friend from university in the dock. And now a waxwork of the killer who took his esteemed brother's life makes an appearance too. I imagine even the shrewd Mr. Reaper failed to foresee that kick in the teeth. An extraordinary move on your part, my dear fellow, to throw that in front of the man. You make it sound deliberate. I can't help feeling that this professor case is really very puzzling. Oh yes? In what particular manner? Well, there's Mr. Drebber, Mr. Scythe, and Dr. Scythe, and Lord Van Sykes. It seems that everybody in the trial has a link to the case somehow. Oh great, now I got the hiccups. This is gonna be fun. Yes, in fact, I alone am not a member of the set. Though that leaves me as an empty set, all alone with no intersection to any other. Excuse me? Oh, it's girl voice! Headphone users beware. Dr. Scythe! Dr. Courtney Scythe, niece Stevens. Good day to you. Hello, Sholmes. That was very shrewd of you. What in particular, pray? You requested a 10-year-old autopsy report from Gregson, didn't you? Why would you assume such a thing? Because Gregson told me.
To think it's been 10 years. 10 years in a little laboratory, wielding my scalpel. I smell of nothing but corpses and disinfectant.
A policeman on the jury had a lot to say about you as it happens, Dr. Scythe. And I've accused you of being complicit in what happened. I'm hoping that you'll take the stand and tell the truth about what really happened.
That certainly won't be possible. Lord Van Sykes won't be summoning me as a witness. Lord Strongheart has forbidden it.
Lord Strongheart?
The Pandora's box you were warned about is the Professor case. But please don't make the mistake of thinking you'll get any information out of me.
But attempting to hide from the truth, that's cowardice.
I've always fought crime in the way that I see fit. With my fit. I have no regrets, none at all.
Well, when I come across a person I really have no clue what to do, it does, and it's a woman, it does default to a bridge girl voice, which is always
just sticking your voice way back down in your throat and trying to pitch it high.
So really, it's always going to sound like a bridge Taya. Or as I like to call her, T.
So, good day to you.
She mentioned it too, this Pandora's box. Whatever does it all mean?
There's really no cause for concern. I assure you, when the trial resumes, the meaning will become all too apparent, whether you like it or not.
Huh?
Now then, I believe it's almost time. I must make my way back to the public gallery. The edge of my seat awaits! It must still be warm.
I think you're enjoying yourself a little too much.
Ah yes, one word of warning before I go. If, in the course of the trial this afternoon, you perceive even a shadow of doubt about the truth, don't let it out of your sight. Pursue it like a dog with a bone. To the bitter end, you understand. Do not falter, whatever may come to pass.
Alright, I understand. Thank you.
Good! I shall make myself scarce then. I purchased a bar of caramel earlier, so I shall be gnawing on that as you gnaw away at the truth. Peace.
What did that warning from Mr. Shelms really mean, I wonder? Especially the bit about whatever may come to pass.
Oi, you there! Into the courtroom!
It's time for the final chapter then. For like the 5th time. I'm determined to find the truth. No matter what.
No matter what.
I've been watching Little Karibo streams. Oh god, it's still here.
Ho, ho, ho! In the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby reconvene the proceedings of this court. Counsels for the defense and prosecution, are you ready and able to continue?
The prosecution is ready, my lord. Yes, my lord. The defense is also ready.
As the court is aware, the case under our scrutiny began with a damaging incident at the Great Exhibition. And we now find ourselves embroiled in the details of a convicted felon who was sent to the gallows a decade ago. Welcome to Ace Attorney! This trial has certainly defied all expectation.
When Ace Attorney says final anything, you know I've got at least 4 hours left in the case. Oh, Kira Cortex, unfortunately I've come to realize that.
As seems to be the fate of all trials in which this Nipponese is involved, my lord. So then, putting that arrogant racism aside, let us begin our exploration of the defense's assertion that the waxwork was currently involved in this matter. Lord Van Zykes? My lord? Are we still awaiting the arrival of Madame Dispels? Not at all. She's in the antechamber as we speak and ready to be summoned. Very well, bring in the witness! At once, my lord. Bailiff, show Madame Dispels to the stand. Things are about to become a lot more intense. If Drebber is responsible, as I'm sure he is, it means he must have an accomplice in Dr. Scythe. And what connects the pair of them is the waxwork. Yes, the model of the professor. That's the key to the link between these otherwise unrelated individuals. It's a tenuous link, admittedly, but at present, it's all we have to go on. Oh, hello. She's got head. State your name and occupation for the court, please. My name is Madame Esmeralda Dispels. I'm a waxwork artisan, and the proprietress of Madame Dispels' Museum of Waxwork. You will have to pardon me for working as I testify. Our new exhibition must open very soon. Oh, so he finally gets a statue, does he? Now there are two of them in the world. Oh my, what expression is she carving onto that face? A number of days ago, a particular waxwork model was stolen from your museum. Can you confirm this? Oui, that is true. At first, we believed it had been kidnapped. A waxwork model? Kidnapped? Usually things that are things are not kidnapped. You steal them.
Wilson57, thank you for the 713 sub.
Yes, my lord. There was a demand for ransom money left behind by the culprit.
As you can see, I'm still trying to find something close to a French accent. Please bear with me.
However, according to what I have just been told outside the courtroom, that was not the true reason. I understand it was utilized as a substitute for the body of a murder victim? At present, that is no more than conjecture proposed by the defense. This is the victim of the case in question, Mr. Oldie Osman. But of course, I know him well. He is part of my odious personages exhibit. I detest to say what is evident, but Mr. Asman does not resemble the professor at all.
I'm guessing you mean one that doesn't sound racist. Well, unfortunately, when all else fails, I have to go to stereotypes. Yes, but perhaps their faces are very similar.
Are you suggesting that we should see now the demasked visage of the professor?
I have here the key, but it is strictly forbidden to open the lock. This is absurd. This is absurd. Absurd.
Pardon?
I don't know what face you carved onto your fancy figure beneath that mask. But clearly, it won't be that of the actual killer. I think the French is now bled into Van Zyk's speaking role. I'm feeling it.
Indeed. The man's identity was never made public, after all.
The trial took place in a closed court. The proceedings were strictly confidential. The condemned man was summarily executed. His identity remains a closely guarded national secret. There is no possible way that the repository of tawdry exhibits could get its hands on that information. Oh, wow. Clearly French. Do not know how we're going to start with the pronunciation there.
Que dommage.
I immediately think of Dexter's Laboratory.
fromage. Quel dommage. It would seem you are unaware of the Tuspel's principles. What principles? The family Tuspels has always prided itself on sculpting models à la perfection. Every detail, including the visage, is fashioned with complete fidelity. And voila, our principles. There's a well-known legend about the Tuspel's waxworks from the time of the French Revolution. A member of the Tuspel's family is said to have made a waxwork of the queen who was executed. Oui, that is true. It was a century ago now. I believe the queen's face was carved in within minutes following her death, actually at the guillotine site. You are correct. The model is on display till today in the House of Horrors. We Tuspels would stop at nothing to obtain a faithful replica of our subjects. Dear me, that's fucked up. That's somewhat disturbing tenacity of purpose. It's the only way to obtain a truly lifelike representation of the subject. And it has been my family's secret for generations. Do you mean to say that beneath that mask? Oui, the true vision of the killer is there. This is ludicrous. It's out of the question! The professor spread terror throughout Great Britain. As a result, the Madame Tuspel special exhibit remains extremely popular even today. The killer, emerging from his own grave. It's a sight to behold. You should come. I think, Madame, it would be beneficial to hear your formal testimony on the matter. You'll explain every detail of this macabre model, and your personal involvement in its creation. Yeah, I imagine Madame Tuspel's is clearly just Madame Tussaud. Though there may be like a more correct French pronunciation of the way they've spelled it here. I wouldn't know. With pleasure. Now she's getting kind of sexy. The special exhibit in the House of Horrors is based on a rumor that shocked society in London. An impression of the visage was taken directly from the corpse, in accordance with Tuspel's family principles. I enlisted the aid of the gravedigger and created a mold for the head in a cemetery just before the interment. I hid myself until it gave me a signal. I was there for a very long time that night. As dawn approached, I was very worried I could be discovered. Really? The gravedigger? The man sanctioned this? Oui. I will do all that is necessary to achieve the true resemblance my family is celebrated for. Nobody else knew, only the gravedigger. What harm did it do, huh? So you truly saw it? The face of that monster! I can't quickly go from Tuspel's back to Van Zyke's. Naturally, I was aware at the time that his identity was a secret, but Tuspel's would not be Tuspel's if we did not insist on absolute fidelity to our sculptures. I don't believe this. I myself have seen the special exhibit at your museum, madam. A truly blood-curdling scene in which the murderer is emerging from his own grave. The scene it depicts was the subject of many rumors in London 10 years ago. I have here a newspaper from the time. The special exhibit was based on the picture in this article. There's a most detailed account of what happened as reported by the eyewitnesses who saw it. Okay. Man rises from the grave. It's too absurd for words. The public enjoy absurdity, monsieur. That is why I have reproduced the scene as carefully as possible in my museum. And it's a waxwork from the exhibit that was stolen some days before the incident at the Great Exhibition, wasn't it?
That's supposed to be a question or a statement?
That is correct. The professor you see before you here.
Most puzzling. Counsel for the defense, proceed with the cross-examination.
This waxwork links Drebber to Upper Scythe. There has to be some reason for that, which hasn't yet come to light. But I'll find it. I'll get to the bottom of what's really happened. What really happened. I'll prove that Dr. Scythe and Drebber were in on this crime together.
Cross-examination.
Alright, what do we have here? Yeah, no, that's fine. Which you already told us. Man, look, almost 3 full pages of evidence at this point. Mad Sheep Rampage. Well, let's start here.
Hold it!
Surely that's illegal, isn't it? It would seem the proprietress of this repository of novelties was blinded by monetary greed.
It had nothing to do with money.
The man is part of London's criminal history. That is why I had to sculpt him to record his history. This is the raison d'etre of the Tispels Museum. But if the man was convicted in closed court and sent for immediate execution, then surely nobody but the members of the judiciary present know the killer's true identity.
I assure you, behind that mask is hidden the true face of the professor.
Do you realize what you're saying? The professor's identity is a national secret!
I understand. And now that the truth about the special exhibit has been revealed, it must perhaps close.
Of course it will. As will your entire museum if you don't tread very carefully, madame.
That could be another interesting chapter in the history of my family, I think, don't you?
So 10 years ago, on the night of the professor's execution, you took a wax impression of his face from the corpse?
We examined.
Hold it!
I'm gonna press the other two statements now and just see what happens. Were you there longer than you expected to be? You were there longer than you expected to be?
I had some difficulties in capturing the subject's form correctly. As I removed the mask, the mouth of the cadaver fell open and I had some problems with the chin.
Dare I ask?
The man had been dead for a short while already, you see. His muscles were relaxing and consequently his chin would not align itself correctly.
But if you had waited a bit longer, rigor mortis would have set in and it would have been easy.
Oh dear, well, what a horrible thought. Under normal circumstances, I would have had an assistant with me. However, that night, I was alone. And as a consequence, I missed my preferred window of time.
What do you mean?
When I take an impression of the digit of a cadaver, I always wait until 3 hours after death.
Why 3 hours? Is that amount of time significant?
It's because of rigor mortis.
But did you wait after that? Wriggly mortis? Let me open my book of everything.
It's a name given to the phenomenon that occurs in recently deceased bodies. As a rule, 3 hours post-death, the muscles in the body begin to stiffen.
At approximately 10 hours post-death, the entire body is completely rigid and inflexible. And from that point on, the muscles slowly start to revert to their relaxed state. The effect is often used to estimate the time of death when a body is discovered. I didn't know that I didn't know that rigor mortis was temporary. That becomes stiff as a stone and then just rot. And that's when you loosen up. Huh. Well, even I'm learning stuff today, folks. Though maybe the game isn't as precise with its medical knowledge as it is with its legal knowledge. Well, that was an education of a slightly scary one. If a slightly scary one.
As the Mademoiselle says, rigor mortis commences 3 hours after death, and it starts in the jaw.
I see. So that's why you wait.
Before that time, the mouth falls open, and it is very difficult to do my work.
Ugh, it's getting hard for me to do my work with all this talk of corpses. I wonder about that information the courts just heard from Out to Spells. Yeah, no, might as well. Yeah, hold on. We have the autopsy report. Nope, wrong one. Probably should have looked at this before picking. Death by hanging confirmed at midnight. Yeah, if he died at midnight and she waited until dawn, then he would have been stiff as a board. The information about rigor mortis that you just shared with us, would you mind including it in your formal testimony? Yeah, I believe it could be significant, you see.
Of course, I do not mind at all. I can't help but feeling that after this latest topic, the atmosphere in the courtroom has become extremely grave.
Cesato, get out! Get out! Bailiff, I need my judicial assistant thrown out of this courtroom. Is there an Uncle Lester in here? This is no time for jokes, Miss Susato.
Madame, amend your testimony as discussed.
Bien, sir.
I have no idea if that's correct. I was hoping she just keeps saying we. Alright, so this is where we have the problem, where I can bring out the autopsy report. Man. I don't even have I shouldn't even have this anymore. It's clearly on the figure.
Objection!
Madam to Spells. I have here an autopsy report that was filed 10 years ago now. It confirms the death of the professor following his execution at the gallows.
And that is that a problem?
I believe it is, because your testimony and a particular detail in the report, frankly the only detail in the report, completely contradict one another.
Quoi?
Quoi? Are you going to explain yourself, my Nipponese friend? According to her testimony, Madame Spells was creating her waxwork impression just before dawn, and at that time, rigor mortis had not yet set in. Am I correct so far, madam?
You are, yes. As I said, the stiffening of the jaw is the first sign of rigor mortis, 2 or 3 hours after death. The man's chin was limp, so he could not have been dead for a long time.
But on the other hand, if you look at Dr. Scythe's report, it clearly states the following. Death by hanging confirmed at midnight, 17th of June. No! If the professor indeed died at midnight that day, then by the time you were sculpting his face, rigor mortis would already have set in.
Oui, yes, you are right. The chin, it would have been completely stiff. And that's not the only thing, am I right, fellas? Hoo hoo hoo!
In other words, this report is wrong.
Objection!
No coroner makes mistakes when not calling the time of death. The very idea is absurd. In that case, there's only one possible conclusion. The execution didn't actually take place at the stated time. Dance break! Ah, there we go. Full circle.
I'm impossible! Order! Order! Counsel, this is beyond folly. Not only do you indict the author of the report, Dr. Scythe, but you implicate members of staff at Barclay Prison. Yeah, where the execution took place. By him! Extraordinary! Not in my day!
My learned friend appears to have overlooked one very crucial fact.
What fact?
The professor died that night. Without question. He did, of course he did. I moved the man's limp jaw with my own hands. There was no...
Yes, the professor died that night. But what if he didn't die at the gallows?
Didn't die at... Are you insane? But what exactly are you suggesting did happen at that case?
It's almost impossible to believe, but it would explain the link between Dr. Scythe, the professor, and that one other person of interest. I have evidence that will explain exactly what I'm suggesting happened that night.
Counsel, present the evidence at once. The evidence that allegedly explains what really happened the night of the professor's execution.
Where is it? Crap. We're trying to say that Enoch is the professor, right? I feel like this is where we're going. Because if he saw the professor rise from his grave, then clearly... Yeah, I may be taking a leap here, but go ahead and see what happens if I present this. What happened that night is written very plainly in this newspaper article. Executed criminal returns in the dead of night at local cemetery. You're suggesting it was a corpse coming back from the dead now? Well, if the article is to be believed, yes. The professor, assumed dead following his execution, emerged from his grave and was killed again.
Objection!
Don't be a fool. That's simply a rumor publicized by the gutter press.
Can you be certain of that?
Are you serious?
The point is, as the article says, there was a witness to what happened.
My word, yes indeed!
Merci! The young man who stole into the cemetery by chance at night.
Objection!
Of course there was a witness. Story didn't write it stealth, but obviously the man made it all up.
And in any case, this was 10 years ago now. There was sure to be no hope of finding him.
Objection!
On the contrary, my lord, we all know this witness well. Oh, okay, I see. It's not that he was the professor, but he can prove that the professor wasn't dead when Dr. Scythe said it was. Got it.
What?
Are you suggesting, counsel, that you have identified the person in question? That you know who claims to have seen these utterly incredible events take place?
Yes, my lord. In fact, you could say that he's right here before my very eyes.
You will substantiate your latest claim now then, counsel. Who is the alleged witness of this staggering scene from the cemetery 10 years ago? Male Strongheart!
No, it's Enoch Drebber.
Take that!
The man in question is Mr. Enoch Drebber.
Drebber?
The previous witness?
The special exhibit in the House of Horrors at Madame Tuspel's Museum of Waxwork recreates that decade-old scene in great detail. The condemned criminal emerging from the grave, and beside the tomb, a young man with a lantern stumbling upon the terrifying sight. And that young man is a 10-year younger Mr. Enoch Drebber.
Order! Order! Order!
Surely not, counsel.
Drebber was there, in Lowgate Cemetery? What is this all talk about Mr. Drebber? Is that name significant?
Of course, Madame Tispels doesn't know, does she? Yes, it's extremely significant, madam. To your situation as well, in fact.
What situation?
The theft of the Professor waxwork from your museum some days ago was perpetrated by the very same man.
No! But that would mean... Madame Tispels, it would appear you know the name Enoch Drebber. Yes, I know it. But from long ago in the past.
What?
Oh my!
Whoa, that was way too high-pitched for Gisato. Good gracious!
Explain yourself! Tell us everything you know! Explain! Explain! Yes, of course. The story of the young man and the terrible sight he witnessed in the cemetery 10 years ago was published in every single newspaper, as was published in every single newspaper in London and throughout Great Britain. However, in all of the articles, the witness was simply described as a certain young man. No details were published about his identity. His name was never revealed. That is, apart from in one newspaper.
The one that has a picture of him in it? Or an illustration that looks just like him?
The Daily Circus. It is a paper from which comes the article I have already shown the court.
You're saying that his full name was only publicized in that article?
Goodness me, yes, here it is. The university student who experienced this shocking event is Mr. Enoch Drebber, a disciple of science at the University of London and a resident of its student dorms. Unbelievable.
When I read the article, I went to meet with the man. His discovery of the condemned criminal coming back to life in the cemetery in the dead of night would make a perfect exhibit for my house of horrors, whether it was truth or not.
I see. So you went to meet with Mr. Drebber in order to sculpt a waxwork of the man, did you?
Exactly. He was studying science at the University of London in those days. He was just a poor student. I paid him £5 to model I paid him £5 to model for the waxwork. And since that time, it has been in my museum to recreate the scene of terror from the cemetery.
I feel like there should be music here. It's creepy. There we go. So, 10 years ago, a young man appealed to the public about an extraordinary event he witnessed. A criminal who had been put to death re-emerging from his grave in the middle of the night. But the public treated his claim as nothing more than an amusing anecdote, which was soon forgotten. 10 years later, the same man steals a waxwork model of the executed criminal, ostensibly to use as a body double for the victim in the case we're discussing here today, even though the waxwork's build is a poor match for the victim, and his face is obscured by a mask. So the question is, why would the man do such a thing? Which brings us to 3 days ago, when the birdcage crashed into the Crystal Tower. If the birdcage had in fact contained not the body of Mr. Asmund, but that same waxwork, the coroner from Scotland Yard who investigated, Dr. Scythe, would have noticed immediately. And yet, she submitted this autopsy report for the victim, which the court has seen earlier. Why? Because the waxwork was at the professor, is that what you're saying? Dr. Scythe put her name to the document, confirming the death of the condemned criminal who was still alive. A criminal whose apparent resurrection was witnessed by Mr. Drebber. But that misconduct was a deadly secret the coroner would do anything to protect. Which is precisely why Mr. Drebber used that particular waxwork as a body double. Duh! My lord,
This court must summon Dr. Scythe to the stand. The defense is determined to find out exactly how the coroner and Mr. Drebber are connected.
Oh, this pursuit theme's good.
Wait, this isn't the same pursuit. It must not be a pursuit theme then.
It sounds good, whatever it is.
But we're saving the next dance break for probably the prosecution theme. Wait, have I just been going through this without even realizing? Yeah. But according to the missive I received this morning through the prosecutor's office, Dr. Scythe is unable to participate. Oh my god. Is unable to participate in these proceedings. Is that not the case?
It's Van Zyke's theme.
That doesn't sound like it. Is the organ music not his theme?
I believe it's called Problems in the Proceedings.
Oh, okay. You know what? That tracks.
She told us so herself, didn't she?
Curly voice, 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 male strong heart. Something happened on the night of that killer's execution 10 years ago, and surely nobody would want to get to the bottom of that more than Lord Van Zyke's. The prosecution calls for the instructions in that missive to be scrapped. But Lord Van Zyke's, that missive was issued from the Lord Chief Justice's office.
Objection!
Did you just object to me? You little turd! The assigned prosecutor has the final say on policy in any particular trial. In other words, me. Yes. Let Enoch Drebber and Dr. Scythe both take the stand together. Order! Order! Order!
Can you object to the judge? You definitely wouldn't want to do it to their face. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I guess an appeal could be considered you trying to object to a judge's ruling. But when a judge rules on objections, so objecting to a judge would be counterintuitive and just get a judge to not like you.
Very well, I will uphold your request. Bailiff, send a subpoena with immediate effect addressed to Dr. Scythe of the Fit. The woman is compelled to attend on Her Majesty's orders.
Alright then, Enoch Drebber and Dr. Scythe. If they weren't colluding with one another, this crime could never have been committed. I'm just a stone throw away, I can feel it. The truth behind all this is about to come out. And that's a quick way to ruin your career in a local region, is it? Yeah, I mean, well, the thing is, so... Sorry, Van Zyke. Let's take a nice legal segue. For reference, in Texas, you have several different kind of basic courts of initial jurisdiction, of general jurisdiction. It's kind of hard to explain this very quickly, but for example, if you are in a large city, you will have at least a dozen, if not more, judges to go to for any particular case. In Dallas, the civil courthouse has at least, I think, 10 district judges in it. In each one, you can go to about any case as long as it fits their general jurisdiction mandate as set out in the laws of the state of Texas. So you wouldn't, unless you're doing a case out in the sticks where there's only one county judge, you don't have to worry about completely burning that bridge, except if you're in Houston, because their whole thing is set up with every time the case has like a step that needs to go in front of a judge, it is just randomly tossed out to a judge. No one has any say on it. It's just spin the wheel. This is the judge for this section of your case. Have fun with them. So if you end up playing loosey-goosey with those judges and pissing them off, you can really shoot yourself in the foot. but in, say, Dallas, you can choose what court you file your case in. So if there's a particular judge you don't like, you can try to avoid them as long as you're the plaintiff. If you're the defendant, you're kind of hosed unless you want to argue that the case shouldn't be heard in Texas at all, or if somehow Dallas is an improper venue, which may work. If you have something, if all the facts of a case happen in, say, San Antonio, it's really improper to do a case in Dallas, unless there are, it depends if there are specific facts. Like if the plaintiff lives in Dallas County and they're a resident, then they can get a bit more leeway into filing a case there. Dallas or Houston? Dallas is the place where you can choose what judge can hear your case as a plaintiff. Houston is you file your case with the clerk, and it just gets, spin the wheel, and we'll find out which judge is handling your case. And even then, it's incremental. So, like, you have a preliminary hearing about a specific part of the case. That could be in front of one judge, but your trial, so far down the line, could be in front of a totally different judge. It's an interesting way to kind of maintain impartiality. You don't have to worry about completely getting a judge that's completely against you from the get-go. But at the same time, it means every time you step into that courtroom, it's going to be a new judge who you may have to explain the case to, because nobody has an encyclopedic knowledge of the law and procedure. So you're going to have to brief a judge on the facts of your case almost every time you walk into the room. Ooh, well, sorry for that segue. Hope everyone got a little bit of knowledge out of it.
Thank you for your attendance on such short notice, Dr. Scythe.
I'm disappointed in you, Lord Van Zykes. You've completely betrayed the agreed policy of both Scotland Yard and the prosecutor's office.
Betrayal is not in my nature, as long as the truth isn't compromised. If it is, if there is even a hint of wrongdoing, then no matter who it concerns, it disgruntles. I will pursue the matter to the bitter end, as would any prosecutor worth his salt.
Mr. Drebber, you took the victim's life by means of a machine that you constructed in your workshop. And Dr. Scythe, as the investigating coroner, you were the first on the scene to examine the victim's body. It is the belief of the defense that you collaborated with each other and were both complicit in this crime. Alright, there we go. I got my thumbnail. But does a line of salt prevent Van Zykes to enter a room? I would try. If I don't want him to get into a room, I would both not invite him and put like a salt line around the doorway. If I was really desperate, get some like sheep's blood and smear it over the top of the door.
And where's your evidence?
At present, we have no definitive evidence, but we do have a very significant clue.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking, of course, about the waxwork. Yeah, no, he'd still be able to throw wine bottles through the doorway. That's something that's hard to stop. This model of the killer known as the Professor, who was sentenced to death 10 years ago.
You don't need to tell me! I witnessed the man's execution with my own eyes, and officially pronounced him dead.
That remains to be seen.
Is that so?
According to newspaper reports from the time, on the night following his execution, the killer came back to life.
Don't waste my time!
And the sole witness to that mysterious event was you, Mr. Drebber, wasn't it? If what you saw in the graveyard that 10 years... If what you saw in that graveyard that night... If what you saw in the graveyard... I don't know why that ends up over here. If what you saw in the graveyard that 10... Oh my gosh. One more try. If what you saw in the graveyard that night 10 years ago wasn't some chilling fiction, but reality, it would make you privy to a very great secret of Dr. Scythe. A secret so profound it could compel the coroner to agree to collaborate in your evil scheme, in fact.
Mr. Drebber, tell the court. Tell everyone the truth of what you saw that night in Lowgate Cemetery. No. What the hell? Why'd you start with this angle? I can't see anything but shoulder and hair. Yeah. Mutter. Like any true peanut gallery. Stupid sexy Drebber. What an interesting twist. Huh? When at the time, not one person would take me seriously. Yet now here we are, 10 years later, and suddenly my story matters, and in a court of law, too. Very well then, if everyone so wishes, let's be frank. I'll tell you the truth of what happened that night, for what it's worth. So, Mr. Drebber, your testimony, please, about the events of that night 10 years ago. You will tell the court exactly what you stumbled across at Lowgate Cemetery. Yes, of course, as you wish. The reason I was in Lowgate Cemetery at all 10 years ago was for a spot of moonlighting, shall we say. Yes, the illustration in that newspaper article was based on what I witnessed that night. But thinking back now, I realized that I never actually saw the professor. Soon afterwards, I was visited by a young woman who sculpted a model of me from wax. Then I gave up on my dream of becoming a scientist, and it was all because of that newspaper article. Wow, really? That whole thing seems like bullshit. Wait a minute, you're claiming you didn't actually see the professor now? Of course, you'd have to have a screw loose if you believed a corpse could come back from the dead. But so you're saying this article is not worth the paper it's printed on? I think that would describe it perfectly, yes. Ah! If the details in the article aren't true, it nullifies your argument for why Mr. Drebber and Dr. Scythe would have been working together. No shit, Susano! You don't need to tell me that! So he's discrediting himself to cripple my argument? Tell me, witness. You claim to have been in the cemetery on some auxiliary business. Can you elaborate? That's right, grave robbing to be precise. As you know, Lowgate Cemetery is at the rear of Barclay Prison. So among students at the university, it had a reputation for being haunted by the ghosts of condemned convicts. Grave robbing, you say? Yes, exhuming fresh corpses to sell is reasonably lucrative. Of course, I never laid a finger on any valuables buried with the dead. So you were one of the so-called resurrectionists, a particularly unpleasant scourge on society. Actually, my fellows and I went by another name. The Repurposers. Doesn't really roll off the tongue, does it? That is quite beyond the pale. You would invite divine retribution, sir. Yes, well, I think I suffered retribution enough. The Daily Circus eventually unearthed my name and put it in print. It caused me a great many headaches. In the end, I had to leave the university. That was the only paper with the bad grace to identify me, unambiguously, I might add. You know, so interesting thing here. There actually was... How do I start this? Not a legal segue, but there was actually a time when you would have to resort to... You wouldn't have to, but a graveyard happened to supply an ample means of cadavers for medical students to practice on. So there was actually a practice of putting cages
around the graves of people that could afford them to keep their bodies from being exhumed by medical students and experimented on, or rather just examined laboriously. So you have that interesting practice of tombs and cages to keep that from happening. So this is somewhat historically relevant, even though it's kind of ambiguous as to when this actually takes place, whether it's around the 1850s or right at the turn of the century.
Out of interest, who drew the illustration for this article? Ah yes, that was the reporter who exposed me. He sketched that right in front of me as I described the scene. Obviously, as time ticked on, I bitterly regretted what I'd done, claiming to have seen something I never truly saw. Foolish, very foolish.
I almost wish I had a text-to-speech generator just so I could have that do his lines.
Well, counsel for the defense, you may proceed to the cross-examination now.
At once, my lord.
I mean, he already described what that was. That was going to be what I was pressing on first. Uh-huh. It's interesting that the professor is wearing an iron mask also in this article. I was trying to double check that. That's right, the camera. But we know the camera doesn't have the photo in it. Well, we have 5 stars. What does this do?
Objection!
Oh, something. Sorry, Mr. Drebber, but I don't believe that. Don't believe what? Your latest claim. You did see the professor that night 10 years ago. Oh dear, we seem to be at odds, but I was there, and you were not. I know what I didn't see. The illustration with this article was drawn based on what you told the journalist that you witnessed. A figure emerging from a tomb, wearing an iron mask. Yes, then the killer was tried 10 years ago. It was decided in the closed court ruling that the man would wear a mask to hide his identity. It wasn't to be removed during his execution and subsequent burial.
Not even the prison wardens were to see the man's face. But obviously, the provision of this mask was not public knowledge.
So, Mr. Drebber, as you just heard... A lowly student of the University of London certainly wouldn't have known about the condemned man's mask. So unless you actually seen the professor that night, it's inconceivable that the artist would have included the mask in that illustration. Order! Order!
Well, Mr. Drebber?
It's a vile scene, isn't it, if you look closely? And as I've already been at pains to point out, I was utterly petrified. Which is why I had it in my head that I'd seen a blood-curdling sight. But afterwards, I came to my senses and realized that I'd been mistaken. You're still saying you didn't see it?
if you're stubbornly sticking to that story, witness. Then amend your testimony to explain exactly how you think your eyes deceived you.
Of course, of course. Only too happy to oblige.
I can't believe he's still not going to concede the point.
What I in fact witnessed was a fellow grave robber at work. What? I mean, that might line up with what Tispels was saying. But let's go ahead and press that. A fellow grave robber? What are you talking about? Well, I wasn't the only one busy in the cemetery that night, you know. Other body snatchers were at work. Whoops, I forget, I can't do that. Of course, when I saw one emerging from a hole he dug, my heart very nearly stopped. So that's the terrifying sight I actually saw, you see. You're claiming it was just another student on equally insalubrious business like yourself? Many of the medical students would wear metal masks to protect them from bacteria during dissections. Oh yeah, that's convenient. Hold on, guys. Gotta do a surgery here. Let me just put on my iron helmet! And you thought the plague doctor masks were useless. No, it's easy using the scroll wheel when they're actually just talking. Clearly that fellow is using just a match to protect his anonymity. Wouldn't you say?
Objection!
But there's more to the story, isn't there? The article goes on to say, in the next second, a gunshot rang out suddenly from behind. The bullet pierced the resurrected man's chest, whose breath then stilled once more. I don't remember reading that. I'm glad you told me. We might assume that the sexton discovered the miscreants We might assume that the sexton discovered the miscreants at work, perhaps, and fired upon one of them. If the gladiator had shot someone in the cemetery, I think it might have been rather big news, my lord. Ah, yes, well... I can only assume it was an embellishment bolted on later by the reporter. No, you're gonna ruin the sculpture! Man, look at her go. Anyway, hey, Dispels?
Excuse me!
Haven't tried out my French accent in a bit. Madame Dispels! Don't take it on, Mr. Sholmes.
Oh la la! Pardon! Pardon! I was lost in my thoughts.
Would it be fair to say that Mr. Drebber's last remark was significant to you in some way?
I thought it was a little strange, that's all. How Monsieur Drebber could claim this now.
If you don't mind me saying, madame, what are you talking about?
Well, when I met you 10 years ago at your university dormitory, you recounted to me about your adventures in the cemetery, no?
Pardon.
Including the gunshot.
Stop! You might want to watch your tongue, you know.
Objection!
Have a care, Drebber. That is no way to speak to a lady.
Grr. Please, Madame Dispels, carry on.
Of course. According to what Monsieur Drebber told me at the time, he did hear a gunshot from behind him, and the bullet did hit the condemned man.
I said nothing of the sort.
No, you were very explicit about the details. About the mask that the figure was wearing. And the blood that splattered over you when he was shot.
Ah, that's the blood on the camera. Enough, shut up, woman, you're making this all up. That will do. Mr. Drebber. Yes? You refute the account just given by Madame Dispels? To spells?
I have no recollection of ever saying those things. Come on, do you really expect us to believe you? Control yourself, counsel. This is not the court of public opinion. I will not permit baseless accusations in my courtroom.
It's not baseless! They're disagreeing! You see where my base is? It's over there, with her. Right.
Under the circumstances, I think it's best that you supplement your testimony with that statement to clarify your position on this witness. Very well.
Okay, and that we know is bullshit because we've already examined the camera. There we go. So we already got it here. Present. Really? Oh, do I have to examine it again to identify it as blood? Ugh. Yeah, blah, 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 blah. Night, Ronin. Okay, try that again. And now you know that you never want to have Suzato look at your pocket watch. Okay, now look at this again. It's already checked. Okay, so wait, you don't... You still won't change it as to be blood. I can't examine it again. It already says it's blood. But why aren't you letting me present it? Did I accidentally present the wrong thing? Huh. Well, I mean, why would I need to... Would I have to press this? Really? Well, let's fail. Let's just press everything and see what happens. Yet Madame Chispel has classified that you told her about both of these details. Not true. I said nothing of the sort. 10 years have passed. Without material evidence to the contrary, you have no grounds on which to question the witness's word. Ugh! Tell me, Madame Chispels. Oui? What exactly did Mr. Drebber say about the blood that apparently splattered on him? And this is what he told me. All of a sudden, he heard a very loud gunshot from behind his back. The bullet hit the figure who was emerging from the tomb in the middle of the chest, in his heart.
One dreadful sight after another.
And since Mr. Drebber was at the time facing towards the condemned man, the blood sprayed from the wound and splattered on his body. That is what he told me.
So, not an experience you would ever forget, is it? Precisely, and I didn't forget it, because, as I've already said, it never happened in the first place. He's clearly lying. If only I had some evidence to prove it. I do! We can't let him win, Mr. Naruhodo. You mustn't overlook a single detail, no matter how small. I haven't! Press this statement. That young woman being Madame Chispels, of course. Precisely. I must say, I didn't expect to run into her again like this 10 years later. Nope, I keep forgetting that doesn't work.
As I have explained, I went by the name published in the article, and Commissar, I found the man.
Yes, the article in the Daily Circus, I think you said. I was a poor student with barely a penny to my name at the time. And the young lady put £5 in front of me. So you readily consented to having a wax folk of yourself made and gave permission for it to be put on display. I did. I should sell what little I had to sell, I concluded.
Ah, oui. I remember now. I purchased something else from you that day. N'est-ce pas?
Did you? I can't say I remember. Ah, there we go. This is where we find out that the camera she has is the real camera he had. So that's the link. Got it. What is it, madam? What was it, madam?
His camera.
Ah! Oh yes, I made a point of taking it with me whenever I made an excursion into any cemetery.
You took a camera with you, sir? To what end?
So when corpses rose out of the ground, I could take a photo of them to record the details of the bodies I disinterred. I had no intention of ever visiting a graveyard again after that night, so I sold it.
I see.
But I still have it, monsieur. It was part of the special exhibit in my House of Horrors. I'm very meticulous about such details, just that to spare way. It would seem, then, that this very camera Mr. Drebber took with him to Logate Cemetery on the night in question.
Yes, interesting. There we go. Now we have what we need. Got it. Alright, back it up. Now we can present this.
Objection!
Mr. Drebber, do you remember this camera? No.
But that is the camera from the fateful night!
That you stole from my exhibit! You dick! Yes, we borrowed it from the House of Horrors. It's the camera you took with you to the cemetery that night, Mr. Drebber. And is that supposed to be significant? This kind of camera is rarely seen in our homeland, so my colleague and I were keen to examine it closely and take it. We noticed that the lens extends forwards. The lens extends forwards on the end of the end of some bellows. Man, that's a lot of S's. Like this.
Hold it!
What's that? There, just on the bellows. It looks like a dark red stain. It's blood. I know my blood. That's right. It's a rather conspicuous mark here on the bellows, in fact.
Good lord, are you suggesting?
Yes, my lord. It would appear to be a splatter of blood. A spatter, not a splatter. Something that could be confirmed with a simple chemical test. Isn't that right, Dr. Scythe?
It would be difficult to determine if it was human blood and not the blood of some animal. But yes, to test whether or not blood at all is simple enough.
I propose that Madame Tuspel's testimony was correct, and that on the night in question 10 years ago, you were I always want to say spattered with blood from the gunshot wound. Well, ooh. And that furthermore, you really did witness the condemned professor emerging from his tomb. There we go. There's the pursuit theme. Dance break. Get up, move around. We've been doing this for almost an hour and a half now. Nitsank, thank you for the 10 gift subs. Dance party for the subs. Everyone do you. We got you, witness dance. Alright. Dance break over. There's simply no way you could have forgotten such a traumatic experience. In other words, the only explanation is that you're trying to hide the fact that you saw the professor that night.
Objection!
But why? Why would he want to do that? Well, not for his own gain, it would seem. For who is then? Who could benefit? Mr. Drebber is obviously lying in order to protect somebody.
My goodness, is he shielding someone?
Yes, my lord, and clearly, it's someone who doesn't want the truth about the professor coming back to life to be exposed.
Well, counsel, who is it then? Who is this witness trying to protect by lying about what he saw that night?
Male Strongheart, by way of Courtney Scythe.
Take that!
The obvious answer is Dr. Scythe.
Scythe? Whatever do you mean?
Imagine if the convict who'd been sentenced to death was not in fact killed. Imagine if that was to come to light. What are you insinuating? And imagine if the convict in question was the country's most hated mass murderer. If it was the professor,
That would be an unprecedented scandal.
Objection!
this is beyond a joke. Need I point out that the dead cannot come back to life? What you're suggesting would mean that the execution never actually happened. Yes, that's exactly what I would mean.
Objection!
Exactly what it would mean. Once a man is sent to the gallows, he hangs. No one could escape. Not in Great Britain.
Objection!
But the fact is, there was a witness to the fact that the man did escape his hanging.
If that were really true, counsel, the implications of misconduct would not stop at the supervising coroner. It would taint the honor of the entire judiciary from the ground up.
And it's exactly because of those monumental repercussions that Dr. Scythe would consent to any demand made of her by someone who threatened to expose the secret, even if that meant being complicit in a crime.
You mean...
I mean that Dr. Scythe wasn't collaborating with Mr. Drebber's wicked scheme. She was coerced into collaborating in order to protect her decade-old secret. She switched the dead body of Mr. Aslan with the waxwork model and fabricated the autopsy report. Again, sorry, headphone wearers. Ooh, leg up! Lord Van Zykes! Pray forgive my freshly filled hollow chalice, and the whole raft of all their discourtesies now.
Goodness me!
It's just the sort of tall tale Londoners would enjoy, I grant you. An executed killer rising from the dead, a Scotland Yard cover-up, a conspiracy at the highest levels. So let me ask you one thing. What's that? If the condemned man really did emerge from his tomb that night, only to be shot in the chest, who pulled the trigger and disposed of him forever? Oh, well, I have no idea at the moment. We have too little information to work that out at present, I think. I couldn't agree more. The Old Bailey is no place for wild fantasies. And have you considered this, my learned Nipponese friend? Considered what?
Do you realize what a dangerous endeavor it would be to corrupt this woman into such criminal activity? It's tantamount to declaring war on the entire British police force and judiciary.
Quite! Hard to imagine any sum of money being offered for research could warrant it. To rely on such stage deception would to rely on some stage deception when so much at stake would be madness.
Well, I suppose. And this was no petty crime either. The victim was murdered. A man who'd already invested money in a venture, and would be instrumental in future profits too. Yes, I had no reason to kill Mr. Asman at all. Or are you forgetting that his death results in me receiving not a single penny? The court is already aware of the contract between myself and the victim. No.
Oh, yes, it's very much true.
The motive for this case runs deep, though. I can feel it. Using threats to force the head of the forensic investigation team to cooperate is extreme. Oh no, I didn't say fit! No! I'm undone! Especially for a government grant he had no guarantee of receiving in the first place. If the research grant was the aim, taking Mr. Asman's life would have made no sense anyway. Which means Mr. Drebber's motive wasn't money at all. He was just trying to kill Mr. Asman. But why? What was his motive then? Your time is up, my learned friend. I'd say you have one last chance before the jury lose their patience with this charade. Let's see if you can back up your healthy proposal, shall we? Oh, he dodged! There we go. How do you explain why this engineer would throw all the caution into the wind and threaten his own country?
At this point, I'm not prepared to listen to more of this outlandish conjecture without proof. So, counsel, present your evidence.
Alright. Who exactly was Mr. Asman to Drebber? There's a connection there that no one's seen yet. And I'm going to have to present 2 pieces of evidence to show what it is. Yes, my lord. The evidence that establishes a motive and explains why the witness wanted the victim dead is right. Let me double check. Yep, Odie Asman wrote the article. I knew that signature looked familiar.
Take that!
It's this newspaper article, my lord. That was written 10 years ago, and every detail has been examined already. What can it possibly tell us? That drivel should never have been written. It's the typical gutter press nonsense that means nothing. Yes, on its own, it isn't particularly significant. However, when considered alongside another piece of evidence, it will completely explain your motive for wanting Mr. Asman dead. What other evidence?
Counsel, you will present your supplementary evidence without delay. The evidence, which when cross-referenced with the newspaper article, establishes the motive for the deed.
No. No. There.
Take that!
It's this contract, my lord. Mr. Drebber, this is the contract you signed with Mr. Asman. Yes, that's right. The very document, in fact. That proves I had no reason to kill the man. No, I'm afraid not. What? Sorry, my phone went off. There's something very significant that this newspaper article and the contract have in common.
Really?
And it's that common link. That shows very clearly why you were determined to kill Odie Asman. It seems the defense has uncovered something the rest of us have missed. So, my learned friend, point out what these 2 pieces of evidence have in common. What exactly is the link between this newspaper article and the contract? Let me blow your mind. Boom.
Take that!
What these two pieces of evidence have in common is a signature.
A signature?
The signature on the illustration that accompanies the 10-year-old article and the signature on the contract belong to the same person.
What? Da, da, da.
As the court has heard, this illustration was drawn 10 years ago by the newspaper reporter who found Mr. Drebber and interviewed him about his ordeal. If you look closely, the reporter's signature can be seen in the bottom right corner of the drawing. And if you look at the contract here, which was signed between the witness and the victim last year, you can clearly see Mr. Asmund's signature at the bottom.
Let me see now. Good lord, yes, they're identical!
In short, the journalist who drew the illustration and wrote the article published about Mr. Drebber 10 years ago was the victim of this case, Mr. Odie Asmund. If I could auto-tune my voice, I'd do it there.
But explain to the court why. Why would that constitute a motive for the witness to murder Asmund?
Well, if you think back, you'll remember that Mr. Drebber talked about that article in his testimony. Yeah, sabotage his career, da-da-la-la-la-la-la. Flashback. We're flashing back into the past. It's a flashback. Here we go into the past. Yes, 10 minutes ago. Truly, this was necessary. Oh my gosh. Yes. Get to the point. Get to the point! There we go. At the time, you were a student of the University of London who dreamt of becoming a scientist. However, this single newspaper article changed your entire life.
So, Mr. Asmund used to be a newspaper journalist, did he?
He did, my lord. In fact, it's widely held belief that Asmund managed to position himself in the heart of his criminal network, thanks to the many dubious connections he made during his time as a reporter. So you had to give up on your dream and leave university. You lost everything. Eventually you found yourself working in the field of science, but only in the shadows. And all because of that article. Written by Mr. Asmund. Enough! Stop this endless drivel about my life. What?
Explain yourself, Mr. Drebber.
Yes, it's true. I had to leave university as a result of that article. But it was just the straw that broke the camel's back. What do you mean? Almost every student of science in the faculty was too poor to actually conduct any research. But they struggled on with their hypothesis anyway, that we all did, only to have them taken by vultures. Sooner or later, you knew your ideas would be stolen and patented by some wretch or other, after all. Damn you, Thomas Edison.
Good gracious.
Making a name for yourself as a scientist in a climate like that was a miracle only a select few geniuses would ever hope to achieve. Personally, I wasn't one of those geniuses. So it was hardly a wrench. Being forced out of the university because of Lowgate was the best thing that could have happened to me. Look at my face. I'm so happy.
Objection!
Mr. Drebber, do you genuinely believe that? Of course I do. Who's better placed to know whether or not I possess a talent for science than me? I'm sorry to say that your words don't ring true at all. How dare you? And I have evidence to prove it. Finally, the science trophy gets brought into this. How are you in a position to say anything about me? I don't know you from Adam. And Adam was a good man. Fine. If you think you have evidence, go ahead. Show it. What could you possibly have to disprove the idea that I was happy to leave university because I lacked talent? The trophy that you discarded because you can't be a scientist anymore.
Take that!
Do you remember this, Mr. Drebber? We found it at your workshop. Duh! Is that a Royal Society trophy for excellence in science? It's so weird for Van Sykes to say that. What exactly is this trophy, Council? It's the greatest honor that can be bestowed on a young scientist, my lord. There is no higher accolade that recognizes emerging talent and promises a bright future. Good gracious! Your prospects for the future were excellent, weren't they, Mr. Drebber? Because even then, you were a genius in your field. But you lost everything. You had no more future. Your talents would go to waste. All as a result of this one newspaper article. I don't know when you realized who Mr. Asmund was, but when it dawned on you that he was the same journalist who 10 years ago ruined your life, it's abundantly clear that you had no intention of forgiving the man. The truth is... Finally, he's going to fold. Hold it! Fine. Clearly this has run its course now. What? I admit it. All of it. What? What are you doing? It's exactly as the Japanese man said. I was coerced into going along with this man's plot to murder the victim, on the condition that he kept my dirty secret from 10 years ago. No. Good Lord! Dr. Scythe, do you realize what you're saying, woman? It's all true. That day, when I arrived at the Crystal Tower and saw the birdcage, my heart nearly stopped beating. That memory from a decade ago that I'd done my best to bury deep inside myself. So deep. Flames. Flames on the side of my head. Furling. It was the professor again, staring me in the face. And then, before I had a chance to react, I noticed something else. There was a note tucked inside the model's jacket. Dr. Scythe, you will go along with my plan. From someone who knows the truth about what really happened that night 10 years ago. It was written in binary, so I know who wrote it. All the instructions were there in the note. Every detail was meticulously written out. I had no choice but to do with it do what it said. I made the necessary alterations to the scene and fabricated the autopsy report as instructed. There was really no other choice. It had to be done to protect the judiciary. I can only apologize now. Why on earth would you buckle now?
Well, there's no point trying to hide it anymore, is there? I would have done anything to stop it from coming out, even collaborate with a murderer. But the great lie about that execution 10 years ago has been exposed. Whatever happens, I'm finished. I guess my daughter will have to take over for me, even though she wants to cut up anything living or dead.
So then, Mr. Drebber, what do you say to that? Your accomplice has admitted everything. Surely it goes without saying. You admit your part in it too, then? I admit nothing at all. What? Have you forgotten the kinesis machine was ripped to shreds by an explosion? Out short of me admitting to a crime, there's really no possible way to prove that I did anything wrong.
Really? Are you fucking kidding me? We have a confession. That's evidence, you dick.
Alright, let's keep going. No! Order! Order! Order!
Whatever this man says, I admit everything. He threatened to expose my secret, so I went along with his plan. And Lord Anzykes, fuck you.
Yes.
I hope you'll accept my apologies. What happens next is in your hands, of course.
I've heard more than enough now. I hereby present the final findings of this court.
What?
This trial is not the proper forum for which to pursue the alleged wrongdoings of Mr. Drebber.
What?
The defendant is Professor Albert Harebrain.
Very true. It has slipped my mind. Isn't he one of your closest friends?
As the court has heard, Dr. Scythe has admitted to the allegations brought by the defense, thereby absolving the defendant of any possible guilt.
You mean...
At the present time, it is the conclusion of this court that the defendant was not involved in any wrongdoing. Prep the fireworks! Does the prosecution have any objection? None, my lord.
Oh, congratulations, Mr. Naruhodo. You've proven Professor Harebrain's innocence.
Without further ado, then, the adjudication. Unless the prosecution or defense have any other matters to discuss?
I don't know. This doesn't feel quite right. Why did Dr. Scythe suddenly admit to it like that? Is everything alright, Mr. Naruhodo? Like you said before, the way the trial is set to end now, the judge will certainly deliver a verdict of not guilty. But is that really what we want? Yes! It's your job! That's what you want! Stop while you're ahead! What the defense should be pushing for now is... Okay, there are two different questions here. What the defense should be pushing now is immediate adjudication. What the game wants me to pick is further testimony. So, well, let's take this train wreck to its conclusion. What even happens if I pick immediate adjudication anyway? Do you just say, no, that's not right? I'm curious. Alright, time for an alternate universe. If the judge gives his verdict now, Professor Harebrain is to be found not guilty without any doubt. Is something... Yes, but it's probably nothing. In the antechamber during the recess earlier. did give Mr. Shums my word, though, didn't I? I told him I'd pursue any doubts I had about the truth to the absolute last. If you gave Mr. Shums your word, then it certainly isn't nothing. It means there's only one right answer here. Yes, you're right. I don't know why I was ever wavering.
Objection!
False choice! Don't even have to go back in time. It doesn't matter. Quinn will remember this. The defense objects to the trial ending at this time, my lord.
I beg your pardon?
We demand one final testimony. Oh shit. Theme song. Not a dance break, but let's just jive to it for a sec. What?
Do you realize I'm about to adjudicate in favor of your client, I presume?
What are you playing out now, my Nipponese friend? Why would you want to obstruct the conclusion of the trial at this point? No defense lawyer in his right mind will do that.
Correct!
Mr. Naruhodo, what exactly are you thinking? The truth. The whole truth. And a way to bring it all out into the open. Right. Yes, in hindsight. That cute detective did tell me to pursue the truth. I'm sure Mr. Shums knew. He must have deduced that this would happen. Yes, I'm here in court to advocate for my client, and to secure an acquittal. Obviously. But that's not all. I believe that I have a duty to the court, to pursue the whole truth of the case until every last detail is laid bare. You're an idiot. And that is why the defense calls for further testimony from Dr. Scythe.
Testimony from me? About what?
About the nature of your collaboration with Mr. Enoch Drebber.
Tuh! And in case it's escaped your attention, I've already admitted to everything I did. The whole truth has already been revealed. Stop wasting everyone's time!
Duh!
As his lordship made very plain, your client will get the acquittal you wanted for him. There's simply no point protracting this business further with another tedious cross-examination.
Objection! My eye!
Pray forgive my careless handling of that hallowed bottle as I slipped. That's what you call it?
What is your objection, Lord Van Sykes?
The prosecution also calls for supplementary testimony from the witness.
Don't be stupid!
If there is more to this case than has yet come to light, then I will join my learned friend in pursuing the facts until the bitter end.
You what?
Lord Van Sykes.
This is most irregular, to say the least. However, as the prosecution also calls for it, I will uphold the request. Dr. Scythe, you will testify for the court, explaining the full extent of your involvement in the murder apparently committed by Mr. Drebber.
Very well.
The waxwork plot. Like the gunpowder plot, but with wax.
It all began at the scene when I saw the waxwork and the note tucked inside its jacket. The actual body of the victim, as indicated in the note's instructions, was beneath the experimentation stage. The body had to be arranged in certain ways to implicate the defendant, which was my job. I enlisted the help of the entire fit to dress the scene appropriately. The truth about the execution 10 years ago is a state secret of the highest level. I had to protect it.
Geez, and the fit went along with this? So I was right. The stage and the machine were all specifically designed for the deception.
So it seems, and all meticulously prepared. You did well to see through it. You're a very shrewd boy.
So kind of you to say. So what about this autopsy report then?
All I did was record the location of the body as being in the Crystal Tower instead of under the stage.
That's all? That's a terrible corruption.
Only my team were aware of the deceit, and then only under my explicit instructions. Nobody else at Scotland Yard knew anything about it, I assure you.
We must be thankful for small mercies, I suppose. Well, I believe that testimony has clarified everything. There's no particular need for cross-examination, I would say.
No, I disagree. I can't shake this feeling that something's wrong. Just look at that expression on Dr. Scythe's face. It's the defense's right to cross-examine any witness following testimony.
What is it about your Japanese that makes you all so doggedly persistent?
Racism abounds, hooray!
Very well, if you so desire, counsel, proceed with the cross-examination.
Yes, my lord. I want to hear more detail about how exactly you had to arrange things, so you left that very vague.
Hold it!
When you say arranged, I presume you mean with this?
Yes, the instructions in the engineer's note said something along the lines of fabricate some evidence to make it clear that Harebrain alone could have killed Asmund.
So, you mean that was your doing? That was your doing?
I fetched Harebrain's ridiculous screwdriver from the stage and took it with me, alone, to the abyss under the stage where the birdcage had fallen.
Alone, Doctor?
I didn't feel it would be appropriate to involve anybody else in that particular part of the deception. There was a void under the stage where I found the birdcage lying in the dirt. I approached it, leaned down, and slowly opened it up. Then I took the screwdriver in both hands and plunged it into the man's chest! It was more of a squelch, but that'll do.
And then you noted in your fake autopsy report as a fictitious cause of death.
Exactly.
So, the actual cause of death was?
The trauma resulting from the 30-foot drop.
My word.
What is it, Miss Usato? Something about Dr. Sai's last statement. It's playing on my mind, that's all. Yes, mine too. Dr. Sai.
There's really no need to shout. I hear you perfectly well.
The defense calls for you to add what you just said to your formal testimony.
Oh? Which part?
All of it? What I want her to supplement her testimony is... I mean, we know the real cause of death. Yeah, did you do to the victim? How you stabbed Mr. Asmund in the chest, that part.
Fine, if that's what you want. But there's really no need to point.
The prosecution concurs.
Stop with the pointing!
Very well, you will supplement your testimony now, witness.
If you wish, my lord.
Alright, how does that comport with the photograph? So you plunged it in, but then took it right out? Oh, that's right. If he was already laying down, why is the blood running down his chest? Yeah, he wasn't dead. And I don't think he was laying flat on the ground either. Because the blood would have just pooled over his breast. Oh wait, I do want to present this.
Objection!
I've got a nasty feeling that this inconsistency points to an extremely uncomfortable truth. Ooh, this sounds new.
What on earth is the matter, Counsel? Have you lost your tongue?
I apologize, my lord. Dr. Scythe, in that last statement of yours, there's just one point that seems to defy explanation. Out with it, my learned friend. There's an obvious inconsistency between your description and this photograph, which shows the victim in the birdcage following the events that led to his death.
Objection!
The court has already examined that photograph in depth. There's nothing new we can learn from it.
Objection!
Watch me, baby! Yes, we've already considered it, that's true. But we now know the facts to be different. What do you mean?
I believe we should let the defense explain. Where in this photograph would we see the alleged inconsistency with the witness's statement?
Take that!
Look closely at the blood stain on the victim's chest. It clearly extends in a downwards direction towards the man's feet.
And why is that significant, Counsel? If the victim was stabbed moments before the kinesis machine had been set in motion, that's entirely expected. Oh! Of course! No, that's not what happened!
Exactly, my lord. Dr. Scythe made it very clear in her testimony just now that the point at which she stole Professor Harebrain's screwdriver and stabbed the victim was after the grand deception was set in motion, when the birdcage had fallen below the stage, out of sight. From the shape of it, it's clear that the birdcage would have fallen on its side after the 30-foot drop. And if the victim had really been stabbed whilst inside the birdcage in that position, the blood from the wound would have spread out equally in all directions. For it to have formed in a longitudinal appearance we see from the picture is inconceivable. Given that the victim's blood seeped vertically downwards from the wound, it must be the case that when you stabbed Mr. Asman, he was standing up. In short, Dr. Scythe, your latest testimony was a total fabrication!
Ah!
I knew it. I was right. Now I've identified that contradiction. There's only one way to explain the facts. We've all been under a great misapprehension here. What? What sort of misapprehension? Dr. Scythe, you claim you were coerced into helping Mr. Drebber as a result of the note he left in the waxwork. You claim that you made changes to the scene of the crime to implicate the defendant, and you claim that you authored a fake autopsy report to cover your tracks. But one of those claims is an out-and-out lie, because the question of what the blood stain really tells us has only one possible answer. If that is the case, what is it, man?
Counsel, you clearly struck upon a revelation. Now tell the court what it is. Which part of Dr. Scythe's story is shown to be a lie by the contradiction in her testimony?
The stabbing of the victim. Duh. Because clearly he wasn't stabbed where she said he was. The answer is very simpler if you simpler. The answer is very simple if you consider the sequence of events. If, when the victim was stabbed, the blood from the wound seeped downwards, as it did, we can be sure that the victim must have been either sitting or standing upright at the time. But as you rightly pointed out, the birdcage would have fallen on its side when it fell beneath the stage. Yes, it would, which tells us that the victim must have been in that position of his own accord.
Objection!
That's impossible! The man was dead, remember? No! That's the misapprehension! When the birdcage fell from the stage into the void below, it must have hit the ground with considerable force.
I lived, bitch!
But Mr. Asmund didn't die in the fall. He probably lost consciousness for a while. When he came around, he got to his feet to climb out of the cage. Just as Dr. Scythe appeared. If the victim was in fact alive at that point in time, it changes everything. Mr. Odie Asmund's killer wasn't the defendant, Professor Albert Harebrain, nor was it the mastermind behind the stage trickery, Mr. Enoch Drebber. It was you, Dr. Courtney Scythe.
Order! 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 Can this possibly be true?
Have you been taking me for a fool? It was you, was it? You killed him? You hoped that by admitting to be an accomplice in Mr. Drebber's scheme, the trial would end, before you were accused of a far worse crime. Cold-blooded murder!
Oh, do shut up! You're so desperate now, you're making all this up! As if I would do anything like that!
Oh, hello. I assure you the defense is not desperate, Doctor. Mr. Naruhodo has established the facts using evidence and logic alone. Okay.
Ha! Logic? Don't make me laugh! Sadly, your logic has a gaping hole in it!
What? What do you mean?
I thought it was obvious. A motive, boy. You're lacking a motive. What possible reason would I have to kill Mr. Asmund?
Asmund was involved in a number of criminal activities, from coercion to theft to murder. There is no known connection to Dr. Scythe here.
Yeah. I'm rather relieved to say it does seem somewhat far-fetched.
True, there's no obvious motive, but there's still something in the back of my mind. I feel sure I've seen something somewhere that hints at why the coroner might have done this.
Yes, I might have tampered with the crime scene and concocted a fake report. But murdering someone for no reason is a very different story.
No. When you question what possible reason you could have for wanting to kill Mr. Asmund, something did come to mind.
What?
What is there, counsel? Enlighten the court at once.
Yes, we saw it yesterday, didn't we? Something that seems strange, but we had no reason to suspect at the time. There's a particular object that explains why Dr. Scythe would have wanted to kill Mr. Asman. That's right! She has so many goddamn scalpels! An Aussie Dragoon, thank you for the 13-month Prime sub. This accusation is for you! It's a scalpel, or rather, scalpels.
Did you just say scalpels?
Ah! It would appear that that word has struck a chord, Doctor.
You... Come on! Out with it!
It was yesterday, when we visited your laboratory. You thought I was going to say laboratory. I fooled you. It was all the damn scalpels you ordered. What are you doing with the scalpels, Doctor?
$500 scalpels a month? That's more than I give the elves!
At first I wondered what on earth you could be using with that many scalpels for. But actually, I realize now it's not the scalpels themselves that are significant. It's the money for them, disappearing every month from the department's accounts. Aspen's criminal organization relied heavily on extortion for its funding, tracing the money from the FIT account to find out where it was going. It would be extremely straightforward. 10 years ago, when Mr. Asman was still a journalist and wrote this article about Mr. Drebber, he may well have stumbled upon information as he was researching the story. Information relating to Dr. Scythe's secret that he would use to rack money from her for the next decade.
Her darkest secret? Good lord, you mean...
I don't know what happened on the night of that execution 10 years ago. But clearly the opportunity to rid yourself of that menace was too tempting to pass up. So in the end, you weren't coerced at all, were you? You did it entirely of your own free will. You stabbed Mr. Asman in the heart with all your might. To silence a blackmailer who knew your dark secret forever.
You'll never understand. None of you. What we've had to keep covered up all these long years.
Where's the breakdown? I want to see a breakdown. A very hilarious breakdown. As very little of the machine remains after it was ripped apart by the bomb. The truth of this case can never be properly established unless you speak out. And if you decide not to, it's very possible that Courtney Scythe will escape punishment for her crimes. What? What? What are you talking about? What? Like, she didn't exactly confess to that specifically, but come on. What are you talking about? Please, sir, own up to what you've done and tell the court the truth about what happened. "10 years ago, you told the truth, and you were robbed of a bright and successful future as a result. I could certainly understand your bitterness and your consternation now. However, this is surely the chance you've been waiting for, to sever the hold that fate's had over you all these years." Super high voltage instantaneous kinesis? I mean, really. It's the addle-brained mock scientists that are the worst, you know. They don't recognize the fact that they don't have talent. They can't even get that right. And so they end up chasing impossible dreams, having unbridled faith in their abilities. They go on and on about their wonderful hypotheses, their stupid eyes shining like a little child's. They make me sick. I can't abide their foolishness. Careful, Mr. Drebber. Don't dent in the mahogany. I was particularly pleased with the kinesis machine. It made for quite a show, didn't it? So you admit it? You admit that it was nothing more than a sham made for the purpose of killing the victim? Yes, I admit it. I did it all in the name of revenge. Revenge for the future that Mr. Asmund's article had deprived you of 10 years earlier. But the revenge you sought didn't stop at Asmund, did it? It was there that the particular Laxva came in. Yes, I see. The condemned convict you saw rising from the grave in Lowgate Cemetery 10 years ago. If your account of those events was all true, then obviously Scotland Yard couldn't afford to acknowledge what had happened. Even if it meant discrediting a bright young man and crushing any future career he might have had. So your plan required that you abduct that particular waxwork model in order to exact your revenge on Scotland Yard as well. Or on Dr. Scythe, to be precise. It was a year ago. By some extraordinary twist of fate, Asmund turned up at my workshop. He didn't remember who I was, of course. He just wanted to employ my services as an engineer. And he happened to have a paper with him. An article on the front page caught my eye. About the coroner who handled that bogus autopsy. About being appointed head of a new forensic team. When I learned that news, my cognitive processes started to devise the plan. What a horrid tale. He robbed me of my future, so I wanted to use the man's own wilds against him for revenge. And I have that rotten Scotland Yard eating out of my hand at the same time. I wanted them all to suffer the same humiliation that I had to suffer. Oh, he can only do this so many times, game. Your actions against those who ruined your future were justified as revenge, at least to yourself. Certainly, no one has the right to destroy another's prospects, especially for purely selfish gain. And yet, in carrying out your plan, you did exactly that. You did exactly that to someone else, didn't you? Did I? Professor Harebrain's only crime was passion for his hypothesis. But you had no compunction about sacrificing his future to effect your revenge. You knew that we would forever be branded as a failure and a fraud. Fuck him. Perhaps life treated you unfairly 10 years ago, and others' misconduct left your life in tatters. But remember this. Your own actions resulted in exactly the same thing for another perfectly innocent young man. I should. Lord Van Zytes, what of Dr. Scythe? She ran away while she ran away. The immediate warrant for her arrest has been granted and she's been remanded in custody, my lord. I presume she will face trial in the coming days, along with Mr. Drebber. A most regrettable situation indeed. She's made great contributions to her profession over the years, except for these 2 times where she really fucked up. It's really a hard truth to swallow.
However, that is the topic for some future occasion. For now, Professor Harebrain?
I'm still here? Oh, yes?
It seems there was a great deal more to your experiment than you realized. However, I think we can assume now that all the sordid details have been brought to light. This has been a very long and profound trial, but I'm pleased to say you were absolved of all guilt.
This whole experience has taught me a very great but painful lesson. This dedicated scientist, this devotee of natural philosophy. I've been selfish and self-centered and, above all, a fool. Professor.
You're just right.
I've spent my life thinking about nothing but my research, misguidedly believing that I could do whatever I set my mind to despite my lack of talent. And the worst of it is, in the process, I've caused others pain and misery. Others who are far, far greater people than I.
No, Professor, that's not true.
What?
Don't tar yourself with the same brush as Drebber. What happened was his doing and his alone. This outcome of his fate. This outcome is his fate, not yours. You're not to blame in any way.
Lord Van Sykes.
The derision of with which he referred to you earlier, calling you a fool, talentless even. The man has no idea. To believe in yourself and work your fingers to the bone to realize your dreams, that's laudable, most laughable. No one has the right to deride another for such choices.
Oh! Thank you, Barrack.
So, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Yes, my lord. It is this court's expectation that you find the defendant not guilty of the charge for which he stands accused. I presume there are no objections?
None from me, my lord. Certainly not. This trial has really made me think, but this is the right decision. It's all been proven methodically and rigorously. I have no misgivings whatsoever. What's that? It's uneasy. It's all over. I don't know what's become of the yard these days. I don't recognize the place.
Very well. All these stupid statements aside, in that case, I hereby pronounce the defendant not guilty. Watch the fireworks. Court is adjourned. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. I've probably used that joke 5 times now. It's over. That was some trial. You're telling me. We didn't unlock the mask. I'm mad. Professor, what a splendid outcome, isn't it?
Oh, it is, it is! Congratulations, Professor Harebrain! Mr. Naruhodo, Miss Susato, I'm truly beside myself with gratitude! How can I ever thank you enough?
I'm just glad it's all been cleared up. That you realize you were just caught up in a bad situation.
Right now, you know, if I had that research grant money, I'd give the whole lot to you. Every penny.
Well, that's very kind, but I'm just a student, so...
We don't need any financial reward. Your acquittal is more than enough. Oh dear. What can I do? Aha! How about this? A memento. The paper about my hypothesis is inside. Well, just as a memento then. Thank you. It's probably for the same, Mr. Naruhodo. It's worthless. I've been wondering, Professor, what are you going to do now? Oh my, yes. What am I going to do? My hypothesis and my great machine lie in ruins. But still, it's been too long since I was last in London, so perhaps I'll enjoy some sightseeing. I must explore the Great Exhibition whilst I'm here, too. See if new inspiration hits me.
I can't allow that. I figured it was you.
Lord Van Sykes, what are you doing here? This is the defendant's antechamber. Barrack!
I'm sorry you had to go through that, Albert.
Well, if I'm honest, it was terrifying. You were like a great demon behind your bench there, snarling down your prey.
Wait, did I just skip one? Okay, yeah. You're one of the few friends I have. I couldn't leave it to anybody to handle the prosecution or the defense.
Sorry? Or the defense? Did I just hear that right? I always knew that you had my best interest at heart. Don't worry. How about you show me around while I'm here in town? It's been a long time since we left university. We've had a lot to catch up on.
Listen, Albert. In a few days, your acquittal will be made official. When that happens, you must head straight to Dover. I'll accompany you.
What?
From there, you'll cross the channel and make your way back to Germany. I've already purchased the tickets.
But no! Hold on a minute, Barrack! What about the Great Exhibition? This is a chance of a lifetime for me. I want to look around.
No sightseeing, Albert. Give up on the idea.
Ugh. Sometimes it's hard to see any warmth in those eyes, Barrack.
Lord Van Sykes. What's all this about? A necessary precaution.
Yes, I think I understand.
You do?
Well, Iris told me that when you went to Lord Van Sykes at his office some days ago, he asked how Mr. Natsume was doing.
Yes, that's right. I remember being surprised at the time, and thinking it was nice of him to ask.
The point is, Mr. Natsume is still alive and well. Even though it's been more than 6 months now since he stood trial with the Reaper as a prosecutor. You mean the Reaper's influence doesn't stretch overseas?
Those in the Reaper's sights meet their ends days or sometimes months after their acquittal. That's been the pattern up till now.
But of course, we know that both Mr. Natsume and Gina were completely innocent.
True. And perhaps that governs the Reaper's actions, and truly innocent they are spared. But I don't want to take any chances with a close personal friend.
But Barrack!
Like the mustached Nipponese, this man should leave the country without delay. That's why I'm packing him off to Germany at once.
Right. Does your friend-shaped package get any say in it? Goodness, was this your intention all along then, Lord Van Sykes?
In court, where people think of him as the Reaper, this man seems absolutely merciless, and yet, sometimes I feel as though I don't understand him at all. It's time to go, Albert. Back to the prison for the time being.
Yes, all right. Well then, Mr. Naruhodo. Thank you so much for everything.
Not at all, Professor. It's a pleasure getting to know you.
Best wishes, Professor Harebrain. Well, once the dust is settled, you must come and visit me in Germany. Preferably, not, before 14 years pass. Should do that soon. Anyway, goodbye for now! Now, my nipple knees friend. Oh, yes? I thought you'd gone too. We have matters to discuss. Can you spare me some time? You want to talk with me? I'll be waiting in the courtroom in 10 minutes. Oh god, this is gonna keep going for another 30 minutes, isn't it? Well, that was strange. For some reason, I didn't get that sense of impending doom as we walked away this time. The Enigma, Barrack Van Zykes. What does he want to discuss, I wonder? The answer awaits in the courtroom, I suppose. Here goes then. Here goes then. To be continued? Immediately. Quiet. So, are you satisfied? You saved a guileless scientist from a great injustice. Yes, I think so. I'm relieved, at least, that the man's innocence can be proven. Even though it's your job to prove he's guilty. Anyway, I imagine you've been wondering where my animosity towards you Nipponese comes from. Yes. Well, at first I thought you just didn't like me. I imagine you saw me as a pretentious child from an unimportant land who had no business being here. But now I think differently. You clearly know our ways, so I would guess that some specific incident led to your thorough dislike of my race. Will you tell me what happened, please? The professor. I thought I'd never hear that name in his courtroom again, to be honest. He took your brother's life. Clint. My brother was Clint Vance. I can't take that seriously. Clint Van Zykes. 16 years ago, when I was still just in my teens, he was already director of prosecutions and a clean member of the judiciary. I looked up to him. He was everything I aspired to be. Pirate King Blaze, thank you for the raid. You're just in time to see mysteries unravel. He was involved in the establishment of justice systems in foreign countries as well. There were exchange programs between Britain and other nations then too, to share knowledge and ideas. As part of one of those programs, 3 judicial students came to Britain from your homeland, the Empire of Japan. Oh! If it was 16 years ago, then one of them could have been my father. Of course. I remember Dr. Migatoba well. I had no idea. I was a minor at the time, training at the prosecutor's office. One day, Clint introduced me to 3 visiting Nipponese. So you'd actually met my father? He and his colleagues were polite and amicable. They were adept at their work and exacting in their standards. It was my first encounter with the Nipponese spirit, and it gave me a very great impression upon me. But 6 years later, that's when it happened. The investigation was going nowhere. There were no suspects even, just an ever-growing list of victims. And in the end, my brother became one of them. The last, in fact, before the case was finally resolved. I'm so sorry, Lord Van Zykes, truly. Clint was always ready to put his life on the line for justice anyway, so he wouldn't have wanted it any other way. He lost his life to the killer, but it was his victory in the end. For me personally, though, it was a great loss. I found myself in a very dark place, indeed. Then I finally found out the killer's identity. The reason why no one had been able to catch the man sooner ceased to be such a mystery. He'd been hiding in plain sight all the time.
In plain sight?
Are you aware of the political events 10 years ago? It was a period of extremely sensitive diplomacy between the British and Japanese empires. A new treaty was being forged, I think. Correct. The Anglo-Japanese Treaty of Friendship and Navigation was being concluded. The leaders of both countries were deep in extensive political discussions. Which is why this particular killer's appearance in court was conducted as a closed trial. If the British public had known the identity of the killer, not only would the treaty have been in jeopardy, but our two nations could very well have ended up in war.
War. A war? Between Britain and Japan?
But that would mean...
Oh my! You mean to say the professor was...
When the trial reached its conclusion earlier, I thought to myself, yes, it's time.
Oh!
Time for you to come face to face with this hideous monster. I borrowed the key for the mask from the proprietress of the Waxwork Museum. So see for yourselves now. Confirm it with your own eyes. The truth that's been hidden this past decade.
That's the professor?
Yes, that's him.
Until now, the thought never even crossed my mind. That the mass murderer, whose crimes shook Britain as never before, was Japanese.
Wait a minute. That face. I feel as though I've seen it somewhere. It's strangely familiar.
Father.
What? Father? Kazuma!
Kazuma? It's not Kazuma? Damn it. I blew it.
My best friend, Kazuma Asogi. After a whole year, finally his memories returned.
Nice outfit.
As he stood there before me,
I liked your headband better, though.
Ryunosuke.
Ryunosuke!
Hello again. My friend.
I'm keeping your sword.
Judicial Assistant Mikotoba.
It's been a very long road. Thank you.
Yeah, you died.
Thank you for guiding my friend here when I could not.
It was an honor.
I knew you wouldn't die that easily. Kazuma.
I owe you thanks, too, for taking good care of that in my absence.
Oh,
No, keep the sword. I don't care if it's a family heirloom. It's part of my style.
great blade of the Asogi clan, passed down through the generations. When we left Japan, this sword was at my friend's side. A Japanese man's katana is his soul, and he couldn't be parted from it. But then, when the incident happened, it was Susato-san's wish that I inherit the sword, and I've kept it with me ever since, along with my memories of the friendship we shared. With this by my side, I always felt that you were watching over me somehow.
I've made it. At last. Father.
Are you saying... Surely not. You mean, you knew all this time? I'm looking at it, but I still can't believe it. This mass murderer is Kazuma's father.
Wait, no, don't destroy the waxwork. That's not yours. You're gonna have to pay for that, Kazuma.
Kazuma-sama.
Ryunosuke. We
Ryunosuke.
have much to talk about. But now is not the time.
Oh, it's the perfect time.
I'll be seeing you.
As a prosecutor. Well, okay then.
That's all Kazuma said. Before he turned and left us there, in the courtroom.
It would be a lot funnier if this whole courtroom was still, like, littered with confetti. Oh, shit. So he's the living after-image of the man who took my brother's life, is he? Yes, Kazuma Sogi. He's my best friend. 3 months ago, when the Lord Strongheart introduced us, I had an inkling there was something there, some connection. But why did Lord Strongheart do that? Why did he make Kazuma Lord Van Zyg's apprentice? When he was suffering amnesia, too. The man was apprehended, even executed. But his legacy just won't die. That's the sad truth. Anyway, that's all I had to say. I thank you for meeting with me as I asked. Shoo. He just fades into mist. 10 years ago, my grandmother took me to the railway station. We were there to meet my father from the train. For me, it was the first time I'd ever seen him. Poor Susato-san. All this is tied up with painful memories for her, too. She's never talked about this with me before, though. It took me time to adjust to having father around, but just when I was starting to get used to it, he called me into his study one day. He told me that a great friend of his had passed away in London, and that the friend had left behind a son. A boy, 7 years my senior. Father told me the boy had made a promise to his late father, so he was studying to become a defense lawyer. I wanted to help, so I studied to become a qualified judicial assistant. As I'm sure you've worked out, that young man's name was Kazuma Sogi. So you see, that's how he and I met.
For a brief moment, My great friend had returned, only to disappear again all too soon. But in that fleeting encounter, something stirred. Something that had been dormant for a long time. As if great wheels had been set in motion. I could almost hear them creaking into life. In some ways, it was the end of a chapter. But in many, it was the start of a new one.
End? Question mark? You can just save it over that one. Oh, wow. Okay. Well, even I didn't foresee that many revelations at the end of the episode 3, but here we are. Thank you guys for joining me for a very longer session of Great Ace Attorney. 2 more episodes to go, but that's probably going to keep us... Man, it's almost... Let's see, I think this is part 27, 28. So it's been almost half a year of this. And I feel like at this pace, we'll make it almost... There definitely isn't another... Yeah, I doubt we're going to make it to part 52, representing a whole year. But we're probably going to get up there in parts before this is done. It might be summer outside. Maybe late spring. Either way, thank you for joining me once again, guys. You make for great company while trying to unravel this legal farce. Let's see who's still streaming. Nick did start Elden Ring right about when I started streaming, so he might be wrapping up soon. So I'll send you guys over to Grant. He's still doing Elden Ring, but I think he started more recently. But I hope everyone has a good night. I'll be back tomorrow with more Skyrim. The Civil War is underway, so we get to see what this frickin' overhaul mod does to it. So, see you guys all then. Have a good night. Stay safe. Toodles.